If you were to Google chemical biological testing on U.S. citizens, you get a bunch of different results that come up. I'm going to attempt to explain the lawful lesson and relationship here and how this can be. So people might say, well, how does the government have a right to test chemical and biological, weapons on U.S. citizens? In this video, we're going to go over it. And this is just one example of the United States using its control over its own property to do what it chooses with its property. So this is going to go over the contracts and the legal relationship between the parties, which is the definition of a contract. Contract is the legal relationship between the parties. It's not a piece of paper. It's not a document that two people sign. Okay, so the legal relationship between the parties, the U.S. citizens and the United States. United States and U.S. citizens. What happens is people register the birth of their child and are issued a certificate of live birth. So we're going to go through and explain that in a second. Secret Army chemical biological tests on U.S. citizens revealed. Repeal the law that allows chemical and biological testing of U.S. citizens. U.S. law allows testing of biological agents on blah, blah, blah. We're going to read through this and really go into the law. Okay? Now, birth registration. Register a birth. Look at all these examples. A lot of these are in different countries. Let's try to find one we might be familiar with. Look, notification of birth registration. Interesting. Declaration, the matter of registering a birth which has not been registered. Got the footprint, nurse records provide certification. Let's see. Registration, birth register. What else do we have? True copy, etc., 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 etc. Birth certificate. What was that? We can't go back. Okay. Certificate of birth registration. Interesting. So, what happens in the law is when you voluntarily register something, your car, birth of your child, whatnot. Your proof that it was registered is in the form of a certificate. So that's why you have a certificate. We call it a birth certificate. Usually it's a certificate of live birth or certificate of birth registration, etc. Okay? So these we're all familiar with, certificates of birth. Okay? By registering, you create a trust. Now, what's the definition of a trust? A trust is a relationship whereby property is held by one party for the benefit of another. A trust is created by a settlor who transfers some or all of his or her property to a trustee. Trustee holds the property for that trust's beneficiaries. Trusts have developed since Roman times and have become one of the most important innovations in property law. Okay? So let's add that here. Trust definition. A trust divides the title into two titles. Legal and equitable. Legal title and equitable title. Let's do green. Equitable title is usually the one that you're familiar with. Okay? The equitable title holder is the one that holds on to the certificate of whatever. Certificate of birth. You are issued a certificate of birth. Let's just put that down here. Certificate of title for your car. And this means that you're the owner-operator. Okay? The legal title is the one who controls, sets the rules for the use of, and takes permission away if you violate the terms of this trust. Again, trust is a relationship whereby property is held by one party for the benefit of another. Trust is created by a settlor who transfers some or all of his or her property to a trustee. Trustee holds the property for the trust beneficiaries. So the equitable title holder is a trustee. Okay? Now, you can close that. If you look at New York State, look at your title to your car. It's not the title to your car, it's a certificate of title. Okay? So if you were to Google New York State Certificate of Title, it's kind of interesting how you might be familiar with this document, but in a sense it's hard to see. It's almost like they're hiding it from you. It's in plain sight, but see how it says certificate of title up here? It's hard to see because it's blended in with the border, but it says certificate of title. You registered your car, you're issued a certificate of title. New York State becomes the legal title holder, and you become the equitable title holder. It creates a trust. And same thing with your child. So this is now we're going to go into the biological testing and all that stuff. You register the birth, you're issued a certificate of title, which is the birth certificate. But this creates a trust relationship whereby the government is now the legal title holder who controls you. sets the rules for the use of you, and takes permission away from you. So that's why the system is unfair and unjust, and why people are against the government, or why people have issues with the rules and regulations that they feel are infringing upon their personal freedoms today. And there's many of them, but the one we're going to go over in this video is the chemical and biological testing. First thing I want to recommend, when you're done with this video, if you haven't seen it yet, go to our website, understandcontractlawandyouvin.com. Go to the video right up here, Freedom, a Complete Picture. Click here to if you don't want to watch on this tiny screen, click here and open up a YouTube and start watching this video that's 37 minutes long. Okay, on a big screen by hitting the button in the bottom right here. You'll see it on full screen, okay? So that video will really explain the trust and the birth certificate situation and how we're involved with a contract that created a trust that is regulating every aspect of our life. Government wants you to get mandatory health insurance. See, let's add that on there. That's part of this. They control you. They want you to get mandatory health insurance. They want you to get mandatory vaccines in some instances. If you're going to go to public schools, they want you to get mandatory this. They want you to register for that. They want to take away this. Okay? They can control you. You're not allowed to do recreational drugs like marijuana or something that's completely harmless to harm. Doesn't create any injured party, doesn't endanger society, doesn't make you a reckless driver or jeopardize anybody's life or anything like that. Why are they allowed to do that? It seems like an unjust law. You don't have to be involved with this trust. You can have private rights and discharge and shut down this relationship as it relates to your car, as it relates to your body with your birth certificate, as it relates to other contracts that you've created that created this trust relationship. Okay? So please watch Freedom, a Complete Picture. You can even just go on YouTube and type in Freedom, a Complete Picture. It'll come right up. It's one of the best videos that explains this. And the second best video is if you go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/wincontractlaw. You can go to the different videos on there. You want to go to my video manager. If you just go to YouTube and type in public and private trust, it's the one with the orange triangle. It's the first one that comes up. This video as well, you must see this video. This video goes into, in detail, the trust relationship, so on and so forth, that we've gotten ourselves involved with. This is a great picture that really explains it in detail. Okay, you must watch this video if you have any moditude of understanding of what's going on here. Okay, there's a living you and there's a you in all capital letters. That's an artificial you that you do business through. And this is a trust that you don't even know, you're not fully informed about what's going on here, which is not fraudulent at all. In a trust, full disclosure is not necessary. Think about grandparents that make a ton of money and they create a trust for the grandchildren's education. And they appoint the parents as trustees to administer the funds paying for the school expenses for the child or the grandchild. And the grandchild has no clue how much money is being set aside because she's just a beneficiary. So you see how full disclosure is not necessary according to the terms of a trust. If you're the beneficiary of some trust that you don't even know yet, is it fraudulent that nobody's telling you you may inherit $1 million one day? No. Is it unfair? No. So you have to understand that, oh, the government didn't tell me this, and that there's a all capital letters me and an upper and lowercase me, and the birth certificate registered my body and gave control over every aspect of my life to the United States. They don't have to tell you. Okay? I'm going to get off that right now. I can go on about these topics for quite a long time, but I'm trying to keep it a little simple here. So watch the public and private trust video. We got a lot of comments on this one. Birth certificate. We went over that? Okay, we went over that. I think we're good now. So you got a basic understanding of what's going on here. Now, this is the reason why the U.S. is able to do testing on its citizens, because it owns and controls you. Okay? I'm just going to go through and read this now to help raise awareness, blah, 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 blah. Okay. U.S. law allows testing of chemical and biological agents on, quote, civilian population. Public Law 105.85, November 18, 1997, use of human subjects for testing of chemical or biological agents. Section 1078, restrictions on the use of human subjects for testing of chemical or biological agents. Prohibited activities. The Secretary of Defense may not conduct, direct, or by contract. There's that word again, contract. The contract is the legal relationship between the parties. Contract is not a document that is signed by two parties. That's the common parlance, colloquial speech version that we usually say, oh, a contract. We feel like it's a piece of paper. The piece of paper is merely the record or memorialization of a contract. The contract is the legal relationship between the parties and is determined purely by performance. If you walk into a restaurant, order food on the menu, sit down and eat the food, what's the legal relationship between you and the restaurant? That you're going to pay the bill at the end of the meal. That's your duty and obligation. Because your performance, sitting down, taking a benefit from the restaurant via its agent, the servicer that is serving you your food and taking your order, you now have an obligation to discharge the debt, to pay the bill, and then to leave. Once you pay the bill, you're able to leave. Okay? But you can't leave without paying the bill, otherwise you're breaking the law. They'll call the police, come and arrest you. This guy came to a restaurant, ordered $50 worth of food, and just walked out, drove to his car, and drove away, never paid the bill. This is his license plate. Go arrest him. Okay, so contracts are purely by performance. It's interesting that this law tells you this. Prohibited activities. The Secretary of Defense may not conduct, directly or by contract, any test or experiment involving the use of chemical agent or biological agent on a civilian population, or any other testing of chemical agent or biological agent on human subjects. Exceptions. Now, if there's exceptions, obviously that means that they can do this form of testing on us, if it's in line with the exceptions. Exceptions. Subject to sections C, D, and E, the prohibition in subsection A does not apply to a test or experiment carried out for any of the following purposes. Any peaceful purpose as related to a medical, therapeutic, pharmaceutical, agricultural, industrial, or research activity. Any purpose that is directly related to protection against toxic chemicals or biological weapons and agents. Any law enforcement purpose, including any purpose related to riot control. So, A prohibits these cruel and inhumane chemical biological tests on humans. Then Section B says that the prohibitions in Section A do not apply to tests carried out for virtually any purpose. So, Section B completely negates the prohibitions in Section A. In other words, the U.S. government can test chemicals and biological agents on humans for nearly any purpose they desire. Well, the word humans may not be accurate because the law allows for them to test anyone who is bound by the law. So they can only test their citizens and their subjects. The citizen is a subject. So when people say, oh, I'm a sovereign citizen, that's an oxymoron, because you can't be Sovereign means to be your own authority. Nobody has control over you. So you don't have these trusts that dictate your life, especially your physical body and if you're free or not. Okay, if you can be put in jail or not, if you can be dictated and controlled, what you do, your actions, your conduct, your beliefs. Okay, as long as you don't harm anybody else, why should you be able to be controlled? So, sovereign and citizen are opposites. Citizen is a subject who is controlled, and a sovereign is your own authority controlled by no one except yourself and God. Universal law, nobody can escape. Karma, what you reap and what you is what you sow. That's spiritual law. That applies to everybody. That's your only authority if you are sovereign. So some people say you have two choices. You can follow God's law or you can follow man's law. What's man's law? The governments that men created. So you can either follow the government's law or you can follow God's law. But you can't escape all law. You can't be a bad person, because then universal law, you get a God smack and you will be brought back in check. So no one is completely free of all rules and laws. That's not what I'm saying, and that's not what I'm advocating. I'm saying you're either going to follow God's law or universal law, or you're going to follow the government or man's law, because man instituted the government. Okay? So back to the lesson here. Again, they're passing this law for their subjects or citizens. If you're a non-citizen resident, you could be a Native American, you can have a citizenship with some other country, you can have a citizenship with your own country that you created, and you can be living here. Okay? A lot of people are under the false presumption that if you're not a citizen, they can kick you out of America. That's not true. You're not within or bound by the laws of the United States, the private corporation known as the United States, but you're still geographically in America, and you've lived here and resided here your whole life. So nobody can force you to leave. That's unlawful and ridiculous. Okay? You have a human right, wherever you grew up and live, to be. And they recognize that for the most part. So if you relinquish your U.S. citizenship, you're not bound by their rules and laws that passed by the President of America, of the United States, Congress, judicial system. You're not bound by those laws if you relinquish your U.S. citizenship, but you can still live in America. You can still live at America. Geographically is different than jurisdictionally. Jurisdiction is what laws you're bound by. Geography, I think you all know what geography is. The terrain. Okay? They're not the same thing. I wish I had a visual, but I don't. So now, you know the difference. Okay? And in other words, the U.S. government can test chemicals and biological agents on its citizens and subjects for nearly any purpose they desire. Following should also be noted. The term biological agent, as stated in above A1, is defined in E as follows. E. Biological agent defined. In this section, the term biological agent means any microorganism, including bacteria, viruses, fungi, rickettsia, I don't know what that is, or protozoa, or pathogen or infectious substance. What the hell is this? Whoa. Genus of non-motile, gram-negative, non-spore-forming, highly pleiothymomorphic bacteria that can present at... Okay. Alright, that's what it is. That is nice, huh? How do you even pronounce that? Or any naturally occurring, bioengineered, or synthesized component of any such microorganism, pathogen, or infectious substance, whatever its origin or method of production, that is capable of causing death, disease, or other biological malfunction in human, animal, plant, or other living organism, deterioration of food, water, equipment, supplies, or materials of any kind, deleterious alteration of the environment. In other words, The U.S. government can test chemicals and biological agents on humans that cause death, biological malfunction, and deleterious alteration of the environment. The term deleterious alteration of the environment brings chemtrails to mind. The site isn't helping. Chemtrails are these things that the government is spraying out of airplanes. Okay? How do, people have tested these things, and it doesn't look pretty, my friends. So go look up chemtrails. As you can see, you've got information on, again, on here on Wikipedia, it says it's a conspiracy theory. Okay? Whoa. Chemtrails conspiracy theory posits that some trails left by aircraft are chemical or biological agents deliberately sprayed at high altitudes for purposes undisclosed to the general public and directed by various government officials. This theory is not accepted by the scientific community. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, one of the best sites, I think, rents.com. Right, Al Gore publicly admits to chemtrails aerosol spraying projects. Okay, if you want, you can check that out if you want.
The sun won't be really blue in the way it is now.
I'll check that out later. Chemtrails to depopulate. Let's see. There's a lot of interesting stuff on YouTube. What chemtrails really are. I think one of the my favorite sites is aboutthesky.com. Okay. And there are these biological agents called Morgellons disease that allegedly are coming out of these chemtrails, these biological agents that control our minds. They control the way that we think. Okay? This is Morgellons for you. And, if you think this is just natural, these thick, I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. Anyways, look into that if you choose to. Let's continue reading. Read the full text of this law here. Page 287 contains the above excerpt. Informed consent. Some argue that none of this activity can be conducted without informed consent, as stated in Section C, which reads, informed consent required. The Secretary of Defense may conduct a test or experiment described in subsection B only if informed consent to the testing was obtained from each human subject in advance of the testing on that subject. Although Section C seems to provide some protection for us in that it requires us to be notified, quote, in advance if this testing is to take place, in reality it does not provide any protection at all. Why not? Because you've already been informed in advance and you're already given your, quote, consent, because this law is publicly available for everyone to read. Therefore, it's a constructive notice. Constructive versus actual notice. Actual notice is a law term used most frequently in civil procedure. It is notice delivered in such a way as to give legally sufficient assurance that actual knowledge of the matter has been conveyed to the recipient. Personal service, that is, physically handing something to an individual, is usually considered the least disputable method of giving actual notice. You can also do it through the mail addressed to the party. Actual notice may be contrasted with constructive notice, which is a way of giving notice that may not immediately bring the matter to the attention of the individual that is intended to receive the notice. Constructive notice includes, among other methods, service on an agent or family member, service by posting, like on the front door, and service by publication as a newspaper. So passing a law that is publicly available is another form of constructive notice, obviously. Because this law is publicly available for everyone to read. By the way, another word for law is contract or agreement. Because this contract, agreement, or law is publicly available for everyone to read, Well, people ask, well, how can this be an agreement? Because it's passed by Congress. Everybody agreed to it. You agreed to appoint the people to Congress. Congress agreed to pass the laws. You agreed to be bound by those laws. It's an agreement. Because this agreement, contract, or law is publicly available for everyone to read, you have been, quote, informed, and you've agreed to it. Because you have not contested it, that's what the courts are for, you have provided your consent. This law is part of a contract. It's not necessarily what the courts are for. If you were to counteroffer or withdraw your consent or reject in some way a law that's been passed or a notice, if you're given actual or constructive notice, you can reject it or counteroffer it with a conditional acceptance, which is the purpose of some other videos. This law is part of a contract between you and the government. See, it is talking about contract. When the terms of the contract are known and uncontested, it's called acquiescence. Acquiescence essentially means that both parties are in agreement. See? Acquiescence, to submit or comply silently or without protest. So, see, they can bind you to these laws without getting you to nod your head, yes, I'm aware of all the facts involved and I agree to it. It's called acquiescence. So, when this law was published, you were, quote, informed. Because you have not challenged it in court, you have consented. By your own inaction, you have said, sure, go ahead and poison me even if it causes death, I have no problem with it. Because this contract meets the judicial requirements of remedy and recourse, it is legally binding. Judges like to say, ignorance of the law is no excuse. I'm sure you've all heard of this. They say this because you are expected to know all of the law because it is publicly available for you to read. So in reality, Section C is legally useless. It does not provide any additional protection. It only, quote, seems to. Section C's only purpose for included in this law is deception, nothing more. And, alright, just wanted to make sure I still was recording because it looked like I wasn't. So in reality, okay, deception. Section C of this law is very deceptive because most people don't understand the concepts of acquiescence in contract law. Therefore, people mistakenly conclude that this, quote, testing will never happen to them unless they are informed about it. The powers that be play upon public ignorance by inducing people into having a false sense of security. As a result, the public believes this activity could not be occurring because they believe that they would have personally heard about it. This false belief then provides insurance that this law will never be contested in court, and as long as this law remains uncontested, chemtrail spraying will continue unhindered. The final result is that this crafty written law has done its job. It has enabled chemtrail spraying to continue without being contested in court. Additionally, this law continually provides legal protection for those doing the spraying. After all, by your inaction, you have given them your permission. When you consider the incredible dark nature of this deception, and when you consider the fact that the law gives you, your public servants, the self-appointed power to kill you, you should then consider what kind of people are running your country or the world for that matter. My personal belief is a little bit different on that. I would say when you consider the incredibly simple understanding of giving notice, contract, acquiescence, offer, and acceptance, it gives you the empowerment to change the matters around you, in the world, and in your own personal, legal, financial, etc. matters at will. That's my declaration. In contrast with this website's stated opinion here that you should consider the people running the country. Okay. I'm more about empowering people to change their situation at will. And all you need to do is keep calm and study contract law. Okay? Supplement, there's other information here. So I am going to close out some of these windows. I hope that this has brought to light some of this, some understanding to you. Acquiescence, make sure to look up acquiescence. Make sure to look up some of the terms. Now you know what a trust is and how you've gotten into these contracts. The same situation applies to forced vaccinations, forced chemotherapy for children that are property of the United States that are citizens. If there is any child under the age of 18 that's diagnosed with cancer, using alternative medicine when conventional poisoning, radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery are recommended by the doctor is going to be illegal. And the parents will be arrested, charged with felonies, have their rights taken away possibly for the rest of the child's life, and be arrested, charged, and put in prison because it's against public policy. So there is a way out. There is a way to be sovereign and to be your own authority and to not be bound. It all boils down to this trust. You register your children, you got a certificate of live birth, or you register your car, you got a certificate of title, which is not the real title. They can control you. It creates a trust. So please watch that public and private trust video and watch the Freedom: A Complete Picture. After you've watched those two videos and looked up and maybe written down the definitions that we went over in this video and studied and basically just kind of memorized or have as a reference the 3 or 4 or 5 key terms that we discussed here: acquiescence, trust, contract, legal relationship between the parties. Put that all on paper, put it in front of you. After you've watched those videos and wrote down those definitions, then you can watch video number 2. See you on the next video.